Good morning and welcome to the BizNews Daybreak. Today is Wednesday, the 29th of April. I'm Kerry Lanigan. Up first, the latest overnight world news from Bloomberg News Now.
President Trump has instructed aides to prepare for an extended blockade of Iran. That is, according to a report from the Wall Street Journal. In recent meetings, including a Monday discussion in the Situation Room, Trump opted to continue squeezing Iran's economy and oil exports by preventing shipping to and from its ports. Trump also assessed that his other options, resume bombing or walk away from the conflict, carried more risk than maintaining the blockade. King Charles III called on the U.S. to maintain its leadership role in the world in a speech to Congress, highlighting NATO and urging, quote, unyielding resolve to defend Ukraine. Bloomberg's Amy Morris has more from Washington.
It was the first such address by a British monarch in more than 3 decades. King Charles used the address to a joint session of Congress to argue for preserving the alliance between the UK and the U.S.
That alliance is part of what Henry Kissinger described as Kennedy's soaring vision of an Atlantic partnership based on twin pillars, Europe and America. That partnership, I believe, Mr. Speaker, is more important today than it has ever been.
The King's visit comes at a critical time as the two countries are experiencing strained relations over the war in Iran. In Washington, Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
The United Arab Emirates will leave OPEC next month in a significant blow to the group that raises questions about its future at a time when the industry is grappling with the massive supply disruption caused by the Iran war. Mia Gindis follows oil markets for Bloomberg News.
In the short term, it's not as if the UAE could have gotten those barrels, can get those barrels out of the Persian Gulf right now anyway. So it doesn't change much. When the conflict ends, however, we'll have to see what the dynamic in the group is.
The UAE will exit May 1st, and it comes after 6 decades of membership. It is a culmination of years of tension with OPEC leader Saudi Arabia, both over oil output policy and competition for regional political influence. A sell-off in technology giants dragged down stocks as concerns resurfaced over whether vast investments in artificial intelligence will pay off. The industry that has powered this month's equity rally got hit on a news report that OpenAI failed to meet its own goals for new user acquisition and sales. Here's Mandeep Singh at Bloomberg Intelligence.
We had the signs since December when they announced the code red. I think I was surprised by, the $120 billion funding round that they had at $850 billion valuation. And now it seems like, given they missed the target, it has to do with the distribution they had through Microsoft and what they're looking to do with Amazon. So it sounds like they feel they can get more distribution with Amazon to the extent they are probably giving away some of the revenue they were getting from Microsoft.
That's Mandeep Singh at Bloomberg Intelligence. All this comes as investors are keeping an eye on big tech earnings. Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta Platforms are set to report Wednesday, followed by Apple a day later.
Back to local news. Taspent Alliance's Trudy Milan explains why local communities are pushing back against Eskom's revived nuclear plans in the Eastern Cape. Local activist Milan spoke to BizNews editor Alec Hogg yesterday.
The area between Mossel Bay and here, well known for its absolute magnificent heritage value, so much so that the South African Heritage Resource Agency did agree in 2024 to provide provisional protection, grade 1 level, so that's on a national level, for the Taspent site. And the Taspent site has also got one of a kind in the world headland bypass dune field system. So an interaction between the wetlands, the dunes, the moving sand dunes. So even from a biodiversity perspective, a very, very, very important site. It makes the original site selections very questionable because if anyone has asked me, the two sites, and I know the Bantam Slip site slightly as well because I do work in Gansbaai with the penguins on Dia Island. If anyone asked me where should we not build nuclear power plants in South Africa, I would say there on those two sites because of their importance from a biodiversity perspective. And it's not just the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees, bunny hugger. It is really systems that can have downstream impacts on communities. Water security, It's not just, it's beautiful sites and it's a coastal site. There's far more to these sites. And we alerted Eskom to this when the whole process started. And going like in a parliamentary oversight committee, they actually at that stage years ago agreed that they should actually restart their citing process. Kuga Harbour is an area that's already an industrial zone. Would make far more sense because everything is there. It's easier for the transmission lines. So they should have really gone back to the drawing board. But we as a community feel at the moment like we're sitting with a parastatal that is bought the land and they're stuck in their ways. They want to fit this square bolt to a round hole and they will get it through. So, the both sites, but that is in the scoping phase now. Although, according to the consultants, they plan to scope out Bantam Slip and only go ahead with Tasman, are sites that is more important from other aspects than just nuclear. But the nuclear issue is a big issue that I think, I'm not qualified enough to say where South Africa must go with nuclear, but it is something that should be addressed for South Africans on a bigger scale. Are we going to sit with a stranded asset? Should we really consider nuclear? Is there other ways? And we have got experts that will provide input on because we do have an opportunity to look at the economy and what it will affect in the EIA. So we'll do that.
Well, the whole economic impact going back to 2014, as I mentioned in the intro with Andrew Feinstein, and the huge amount of opposition that came through then. Clearly, Jacob Zuma was in power, and we know from the Zondo Commission what they were trying to achieve. But this time around, is there anything that your experts have said about the economic impact? Could it be better if presumably the government of national unity are not going to be stealing in the same way as the Zuma guys were?
It's very difficult to say because they're obviously Eskom and somewhere someone in government wants to have the development in the Eastern Cape. It's very clear. I think we're all in this country a bit, jaded, and whenever we hear any of this, first thing we see is, okay, who's going to get the money? What, and it's very sad that we're at that point, but unfortunately we are.
Yesterday afternoon, BizNews' Alec Hogg and Stuart Lohman gave their monthly update of the BizNews Ricardo portfolios, with a focus on AI, robotics, and Tesla's next big bet.
Starting off with the highlights of the portfolio, it's up 3.9%, the US dollar portfolio. So it's doing very well if you consider all of the ructions that are going on around the world at the moment. Pretty much focused on AI alpha and not putting everything into one bucket, as it were. But here is the portfolio. You can have a look there and see ASML, Google, Amazon, Teledyne, Chubb, and Meta platforms are in the green, and then Berkshire, Uber, Bitcoin, Palantir, and Tesla. Now, we knew about Palantir and Tesla. We did say to you, this is where Rand cost averaging is going to work out. Tesla's results that came through I was very happy with, and I'll give you a little bit more insight into that in a moment. Palantir had just got ridiculous. It had ballooned. You might remember that we originally bought Palantir at $8 a share, and it's now sitting at $143 after having quite a fabulous run to over $200 a share. So it was tempting not to be invested in Palantir at all, given the huge surge that it had had. But it's such a great company. It's got such a great positioning that we didn't want to miss out on that in the long term, and especially with Rand cost averaging. While the share price is excessive, you buy less of the equity, whereas when the share price falls, as it has been doing on Palantir, you're buying progressively more of the equity. So let's move on to the news that came through this time round. ASML is a heavyweight producer. It really is a stock that we want to be able to focus on in the long term. It's one of those rarities in the modern world where it's actually a monopolist. It makes these machines, and I've got a lovely picture there for you to have a look at. These machines that it makes are then sold on, and this is hundreds of millions of dollars for that machine, and then they are used to produce semiconductors. So the clients of ASML are companies like TSMC, which is in Taiwan, the biggest maker of chips. And ASML is not American. It's not Asian. It's beautifully in the middle. Something that South Africa can learn a lot from is the way that the Netherlands play it. What I've been doing is looking at the quarterlies this time around for the first time from our portfolio constituents. And then I take those results and then produce a boardroom talk, which you can listen to at your leisure. So it'll bring you up to date on how the quarterlies have gone for those companies. And there've been a couple of boardroom talks on that now. It's essentially where I talk you through what the results were and what it means for us here in South Africa. Teledyne was one of those quarterlies. And I've put a picture there of the man that Warren Buffett rates as the best CEO ever. Yeah, kid you not. There's a book called Outsiders, written by William Thorndike, in which he focuses on 8 of these CEOs. And the intro or the preface focuses on this gent, Henry Earl Singleton, an absolute superstar genius, but somebody who aligns with what Jim Collins wrote about in Good to Great, a low-profile entrepreneur. Just try to stay under the radar as much as he could. But he's the man who invented share buybacks, which is a very logical, rational thing. If your share price is trading at a massive discount to the value of your company, well, the best investment you can make is buy back your shares. And Teledyne did this before anybody else was even thinking of it. Through decades, they delivered fantastic performance while Singleton was in the chair. He died in the last century. So this is a long time ago. But why Teledyne? Because they retain that culture. And a lot of what Teledyne has done is a little bit like what ASML has done. For the clients of ASML, there is no alternative. You've got to go to the Netherlands and you've got to go and buy these machines that they produce. And there's no one's even getting close to challenging ASML in that spot. Teledyne is a similar company, but it does it with electronics. So you'll find in drones, for instance, there is stuff that Teledyne makes and only Teledyne makes, which anybody who's involved in drones has to buy. On to the underperformers, and Tesla produced its first quarter results. I listened to Elon Musk's quarterly discussion with shareholders. They have what they call earnings calls. I don't get to listen to all of them, but Elon being Elon, I wanted to hear this one. And man, does this guy impress me. I know that a genius like Sir Jacob says it's the best short on Wall Street. And I just disagree. I disagree so strongly with him. Elon is looking ahead in a way that most mere mortals do not have that ability. When you research how Elon Musk thinks and how it is that he has created completely new paradigms for the space industry, for the electric car industry, for things like AI. He was the original guy, or one of the original guys who put together ChatGPT. Elon Musk is way ahead on robotics. And he reckons that robots, personal robots, are going to be the biggest product ever. And he has got in his factories the ability to produce 1 million by the end of this year, and in future, many millions of these robots. Now, you got to wonder, and he's pivoting towards it. He's talking about investing $25 billion in these factories, in robots, not electric cars, not in software, not even in robo-taxis, which are going great guns. They are now, have been operating in Texas, in a couple of cities there, very efficiently. You can get a robo-taxi. In other words, a taxi, you call, a taxi comes, arrives, you get in, off it takes you to, with no driver, it takes you to the destination. This is science fiction for us here in South Africa, where we do have other taxis who are quite aggressive. There, it's science fact. And Elon's, that's so far advanced, and it's kind of running now. Now Elon is saying, robots, that's the next thing. And he's Optimus is the Optima is the name of the robots, and they are way ahead on that scale as well. The Chinese have been quite good, and you see quite a lot of Chinese videos around the place on TikTok and so on. But when it comes to producing at scale, nobody will compete with Tesla. But investors are looking at Tesla and saying, what's happening with your electric cars? And so they're valuing them as an electric car maker, not about the future. And the future is this huge pivot towards robotics. Now, Elon could be wrong. He could very well be wrong. He wasn't wrong about space. He wasn't wrong about electric vehicles. He wasn't wrong about AI, but he could be wrong about robotics. And that is the risk that you have here. But if he's right, he wasn't wrong about driverless cars either, or driverless taxis. But if he is right on robotics, and he's got a pretty good track record, then what we're seeing at Tesla at the moment is certainly not the best short in the market. That's my view.
That's your BizNews Daybreak. I'm Kerry Lanigan. Thanks for listening.